welcome to the first episode of our new podcast that we're launching, where we'll be discussing all things transactional finance, covering angles sort of the future of transactions, the challenges being faced and that sort of thing. So today, as our first guest, a really special guest, Lee Greenwood, who's the Credit Control Manager at Atlas in Hemel. Over to you, Lee, to introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name's Lee Greenwood. I am the Credit Manager for Atlas Copco Compressors, based in Hemel Hempstead. I've been with the company for 27 years nearly, dealing with all aspects of credit control. I joined the company back in 1996 as a young fledgling credit controller, dealing with my own portfolio of customers and all aspects of credit control for that portfolio. I then moved to Atlas Copco Tools, a separate division where I became senior credit controller about 3 years later. In 2006, the opportunity came along to become the credit manager for Atlas Copco Compressors, which I joined in 2006, and here's where I've been ever since. It's a really great role, actually. You deal with all aspects of credit control function, and liaising with different teams within the business, especially sales and marketing. And these are the vital links to have within the business, and certainly makes my job a lot easier having a good relationship with all these different in-house partners.
Perfect. I know you sort of mentioned there, obviously business partnering being quite a key aspect of your role, trying to keep the internal stakeholders on side. I mean, how much of your time is spent sort of doing the business partnering aspect, and how big is that for all of your more junior credit controllers underneath you?
It's a vital part of the business and does take up a lot of time. We are effectively a sales company, so we are dealing with our sales guys all the time, be it external field sales personnel and internal sales departments. The credit control department liaise with these really regularly because there's always issues with certain orders, and we need their help sometimes to collect the money in, as they have the relationship with the purchasing team at their customer and also on-site engineering team, because we do a lot of bespoke customer compressor installations. So they deal quite a lot with these people. So to have them on our side, to be able to be that bridge in effect between ourselves and the customer's accounts payable department. So this is really helpful and vital in getting our money in on time.
Yeah, and I suppose on the same breath then, how important is it to have good business partner relationships with your customers in terms of their AP teams? Is it, when you've got the good relationship, is that helpful in terms of getting any issues resolved, getting payments in quicker?
Yes, definitely. So each of my credit controllers look after a certain portfolio of customers. So they have their own relationships with accounts payable teams in the customer's business. So they gradually over the months build a relationship with these people, which is again really vital. Communication is the key to all aspects of credit control, and this is certainly top importance for our credit controllers to have that relationship with customers AP. We like them to kind of call them quite a bit as well as emailing, because you can have that sort of verbal relationship, and it's good to sometimes have a little laugh and a joke with the customer. It builds the rapport, and especially with our regular ordering customers, we have 10 or so premier distributors for our products, and these are key accounts. So very important for the credit controllers to have that relationship with those.
Yeah, perfect. And I suppose for you, in terms of sort of further opportunities within credit controls, obviously for your career started off as credit controller, moved over to senior and then credit manager. For you, typically, what is the kind of development route? If you get a junior credit controller into your team who wants to progress, how would they go about that? What opportunities can present themselves to an ambitious credit controller?
Sure, I think with Atlas Copco, we kind of do it the right way. So if a person is really doing well and is kind of head and shoulders above the other team members, then the role of senior credit controller, is one that we use. Obviously, and then the final kind of progression there is to go to credit manager if that position becomes available.
Yeah, and I suppose in your view, what are the key differences between sort of entry-level credit controller, senior credit controller, and credit manager? What are the different kind of duties people can expect as they climb the ladder?
Okay, so when with the normal credit controller role, you're dealing with kind of basic functions, but across the board. I think when you go to senior credit controller, you're kind of you're getting that almost team leader personality, and then to demonstrate skills and relationships with the other credit controllers, and then obviously culminating in the credit manager role, which really deals with, again, all aspects of the credit control role, but as well dealing with the senior management team in the business, banks. We do a lot of bank guarantees and letter of credits. So these are the kind of more in-depth functions that the credit manager has. And again, customer visits and really being that bridge again between the customer and the business. Credit manager role is a customer facing role. Again, relationships and communication very much key part.
Yeah, perfect. And I suppose in your opinion and your words, why is credit control such a vital function for any business besides just sort of collecting debt? What would you say is sort of the key aspects for you guys and why it's so important?
Okay, so I mean, the credit control role used to be part of the general accounting role back in the day. And if that person had a bit of spare time, they may actually pick the phone up and call a few customers to try and incoming cash. That has really developed, certainly I'd say within the last 20 years, really has become a key role now, because cash flow is vital to any business, and especially in the current economic climate, business needs cash to survive. So, I mean, Atlas Copco, I would say not long after I joined, I could already see that the receivables were starting to be taken a lot more seriously. In a sales company, it's normal sales department are the golden boys that bring in the orders and the lifeblood of the business. But certainly Atlas Copco took this seriously. I'd say back from probably about 1998 kind of time onwards. Extra focus was put on receivables. Targets were getting tougher, and they invested a serious amount of money in kind of software at the time to make the job easier and, you know, get the best out of the credit controllers, because they recognized it was a key core role within the company.
Yeah.
Normally, you know, we find that the sales team get everything they need, you know, in terms of software and things like that for them to make their job easier.
Yeah.
But certainly it became similar for credit control back then.
Yeah. I suppose realistically, without you guys chasing the money, like you say, no cash flows coming into the business, and the business completely stops, isn't it?
Exactly. And for Atlas Copco, it's essential because we are always expanding via acquisitions. So Atlas Copco does not borrow money from external banks. We have our own global cash flow pool in Stockholm, and the cash coming into the business from our receivables and certain other areas funds the company expanding by purchasing, you know, other companies.
Yeah, perfect. And I suppose sort of that leads on to what are the key challenges that are facing a credit control team at the moment?
Okay, well, currently, you know, with the state of the economy, we're noticing certainly in the last year that insolvencies are becoming more frequent. During the pandemic, actually, we had no bad debts during that 2-3 year period. But suddenly in the last year, we've suddenly had a few businesses fail, and we've written off a small amount of bad debt compared to what we did in the pandemic, obviously. So things are definitely getting tougher out there. We're also seeing customers hanging on to their money that bit longer. We have to go to the legal stage more frequently than we used to. And also we're getting lots of requests from companies wanting to extend their payment terms. We're continually having to kind of try and bat those back where we can. So yeah, definitely much more challenging this year than in the last 2-3 years, I would say.
Yeah, and I suppose has that been a sort of combination of the effects post-COVID and obviously, like you're alluding to there, the economic state of the world at the moment, with inflation being so high and money being so tight?
Yeah, obviously the pandemic created challenges for the global economy. The energy crisis, obviously the situation in Ukraine, these are all factors just ramping up, and the inflation as well, as you mentioned, ramping up the pressure on businesses to be, you know, operating through their cash flow and stuff. So definitely very challenging at the moment.
Yeah, and I suppose as well, sort of looking at pre and post COVID, have you noticed a difference in the ways of working or the ways that you guys will go about chasing debt, following on from 2020?
Yes, definitely. So luckily Atlas Copco implemented Microsoft Teams just before the pandemic and the lockdown started. So most of us already had the sort of functionality to work from home, but certainly Microsoft Teams was a godsend in enabling all the other people in the business who didn't used to work from home at all be able to. We found that actually our productivity increased greatly during the lockdown. I think generally people were starting earlier, more focused, and not taking as many breaks, and also just the general chit chat that you get in the office wasn't happening. So we found that we were really collecting much more of our debt, doing those jobs that you never get time to do, you know, reconciliations, things like that. So we were really running, you know, well and lean during that period. And I think, you know, since then we've operated a 3-day in the office policy here at Atlas, and I think most of our staff are happy with that. So you get 3 days in the office and 2 days at home, where if you need to do something focused, you can still have that quiet time to do those jobs. So yeah, the business as a whole did really well during the pandemic, but we're also finding that we need to be much more proactive in our chasing. So we put a lot of time and effort into ensuring that invoices get emailed as quickly as possible to the customer, that they, you know, get to the right place, that the invoices are correct, because that's the start of effective credit control. We have a very proactive credit management policy, so we always send out pre-due communications 15 days before the invoice due date. And I also encourage the team to, when it's a large receivable, which for us, I would say anything over 50k, we try and put a call in a few days before the due date as well, to ensure there's no problems with the invoice and that it's hopefully going to be paid on time.
Yeah, perfect. And I suppose, like you kind of mentioned there, in terms of the ways you go about chasing, obviously with sending reminders and calls in advance, have you noticed that with, say, other businesses working from home, is it now more difficult to get hold of accounts payable teams? You have to sort of, do communication methods change since COVID?
Definitely. You know, when everyone was in lockdown and working from home, very difficult to get through to people on the phone. So the communication definitely became more email based. You know, people were just generally uncontactable at all, you know, in that period. But, you know, as I say, I like the team to actually call, because when you call, you're going to get an answer immediately, as long as you can get through to the person, of course. But you're going to get an answer on whether that invoice is going to be paid, it's in dispute, or they need a copy of the invoice. Emails can get unanswered, you know, and we do find this a lot, that when we send out a batch of reminders, you know, we don't get a lot of response on all of those, on some of those contacts, you know. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've seen it from a recruitment standpoint with people working from home, where you used to be able to call an office and sort of 9 times out of 10 get through to people. It is more challenging. More challenging now, but I think that in some way adds to the enjoyment, doesn't it? It makes your days a little bit tougher sometimes, but it's needed. Yes, definitely.
And I suppose, sort of in your opinion, what does the future of credit control look like? Do you see automation and sort of AI kicking in, or do you see it being very much still a human-led approach, or even potentially sort of credit controllers becoming more like business partners?
Yes, certainly. We've seen the rise of credit management systems in the last sort of 10, 15 years. We've always used one since since about 20 years ago, had a credit management system, and we've had a few, and some are better than others, and some enable the process to be much more automated. But I have a team of 5 very experienced credit controllers, and my take on this is that these systems are very good. You know, you can fire out reminders automatically on certain dates, but the credit controller knows that all customers are difficult, and the credit controller knows that individual customer from the relationship that they have with them. So, you know, some customers you have to almost send like a stop or legal letter quite early on in the process, because you know that they're bad payers. So,
Yeah.
and other customers, you know that they respond better to a quick call or rather than, you know, a load of emails. So what some of these systems can do is they can take away some of the expertise of the credit controllers. And I've always tried to find the mix between those two things. And yeah, certainly, you know, they're doing more and more these days. They're constantly being developed. For instance, the latest versions of some of these credit management packages can even do, you know, online credit applications and credit limit approvals, all automated within the system. They get emailed to the authorizer through the system and, you know, digitally signed and filed. So it takes away a lot of function from the credit controllers. But if you manage it well, then, you know, the credit controllers have the time to be able to focus on the core role, which is to get the money in. So, but we also see with customers, they're all having these portals now for invoicing, things like Ariba and Tungsten. So now the role has changed slightly. In the fact that the credit controllers have to enter the invoices into this system. And you find that if that's all done correctly, and it does take quite a bit of time to do that, but then once it's in the system, then it's easy to spot when that invoice is going to be paid, and you know it will get paid. So the role has changed, that the credit controllers look in the portal now to see the status of invoices rather than actually calling the customer, you know, to find out what's going on with an invoice. So that seems to be the way it's going. And we've had more and more, especially the larger blue chip companies that we deal with, are all using these portals now.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that we've seen as well, with more and more portals popping up. I mean, even when I first started in recruitment 4.5 years ago, it was very much we would email an invoice to a line manager. Now it's into sort of the accounts payable inbox, or like you say, the portals.
Yeah.
And I guess sort of for you, when you're sort of looking back on your career, or sort of mentoring more junior members of the team who have just joined, what sort of bit of advice do you have for your younger self, or for someone just starting out in credit control?
Sure. Well, definitely the Institute Credit Management qualification is definitely something I would recommend to young credit controllers to pursue, to get that qualification in credit management. And I think the younger that you are to do it, the better it is. It gives you more opportunities earlier in your career if you've got that behind you. Personally speaking, it took me a while to get around to getting it done, but I wish that I had done it in my very early days of credit control. And also to communication, you know, to develop good communication skills, because you are going to be dealing with everybody in the business, from customers to sales guys to management to marketing communications. We deal with most of the areas of the business in our function, and definitely communication vital. So to ensure that you've got great communication skills, written, verbal, is key for me.
Yeah, perfect. That's some great advice for people just starting out, and obviously looking back on your your experience as well. I suppose on a final note, what's your message to people who are considering a career in credit control, and just in general joining finance on the transactional side? What's your message to them when they're considering it?
Okay, well, definitely, as I mentioned along earlier part of this podcast, that credit control is gaining, importance in the business. So it really is a worthwhile function to get into. Gives you great all-round skills in the business. I used to work in the treasury department at Hilton Hotels many years ago when I was 19, and I had a epiphany one day, and I thought I really want to get into credit control. Not really quite sure what was behind it, but I ended up doing it, and I've never looked back since. And I've always been in work, and I'm lucky to work for a company like Atlas Copco that you work hard, you really can progress through the ranks, and they look after you. Really good company to work for, good benefits. So for me, it's been a really worthwhile change of career path. I'm not sure where I would have ended up had I not gone down that route. So and I look back at it, and I think it's very rewarding job when you getting that old payment that you've been trying hard to get in. It's like a sales guy getting that massive order in. So it's very rewarding. Yeah, and I've really enjoyed it. I can't imagine doing anything else now at this stage.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate your time joining me and being our first guest on this podcast, Lee. It's been great to talk to you, and I think people get a lot of value from what you said there when they're considering roles in credit control, and even what the future of credit control can look like.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you. I'm honoured to take part, and really enjoyed the experience.
Amazing. Well, thanks, Lee. Really appreciate it.